Hello, welcome back to my podcast. In today's podcast, we're going to continue our lecture on Academic IELTS Writing Task 1, Lexical Resources or Vocabulary. So, today we're going to move on to Part 4 and 5 or Modules D and E. We're going to talk about process and map, lexical resources or vocabulary. So, you can use them to describe stages of the process sequences, and spatial transformation with clarity and precision. So we will start with sequencings, and then move on to processes, then maps, then spatial. Okay, so here is the process lexical resources or vocabularies, describing sequencing and the use of passive voice. So I group the vocabulary to describe process into four groups. Group 1 is beginning, group 2 is continuing, group 3 is middle, and group 4 is ending. So, what do I mean by group 1 beginning? Well, beginning here is a group of vocabulary or lexical resource used to describe the beginning process of doing something. So, we have the word initially, mean at the beginning, or first, at the first stage. The process begins when or with in the initial phase. Again, these vocabularies and phrases are being used frequently to describe the beginning of the process of doing something. Then we move on to continuing. What do I mean by continuing? Continuing here refers to the continuing process of doing something. So we have these group of words we can use to describe that. For example, we have subsequently, following this, next, then, after that, at the next stage, once, has been. And we use past participle in here or verb 3 column. Alright, we move on to group 3 of the lexical resources used to describe the middle process of doing something or during the process of doing something. So we have these group of words. Meanwhile, during this stage, simultaneously, at the same time, and concurrently. So please make use of these words and phrases to describe the middle process of doing something. And last but not least, we have the fourth group of words to describe the finish or the ending process of doing something. So we have finally, ultimately, in the final stage. The process concludes when, at the last stage. Again, these are very crucial group of lexical resources where you can make use in your IELTS writing task. One, to describe process diagram or even map so that you can earn higher band score. One more thing before we move on is remember to use passive voice because it is really essential in the process description. Let's say you want to say the material is heated, and you don't want to say someone heats the material. So that's a no go zone to use active voice. Again, in writing task 1, we use passive voice. Okay, let's have a look at this process diagram example. I want you to look at this water purification process and stages process diagram. So if you have a look at it, you will see that there are six main stages of process. First, it starts with collection, which means the water is collected from the reservoir or its original places. And then stage two, screening. Screening is referring to, a large debris is removed through metal screen. And then we go to stage three, coagulation. Well, coagulation is the part where chemicals are being added to bind small particles. So that's the purpose. And then we have stage four, filtration. Well, filtration is the process where water is passed through sand and gravel filters, right? And then stage five, disinfection. Disinfection is one of the most important stage in water purification, where chlorine is added to eliminate bacteria from the water. And then we have this final stage, distribution, stage six, where purified water or drinkable water is pumped to the households. So we can describe these stages using the vocabulary or lexical resources, the four group that we talked about earlier, you know, to describe these six stages. So, for example, we can say initially water is collected from a natural reservoir. You see, is collected is passive voice. That is present simple passive voice using it to describe, you know, um, the collection of water from the original place. And initially is you know, the beginning group of vocabulary or lexical resource we were talking about earlier. Then we can also use subsequently. This subsequently is a vocabulary group in the group two of the vocabulary we talked previously. It is in the continuing group. So we say subsequently, it is passed through filters to remove impurities. So is passed through, that is present simple passive voice again. So again, use the four group of vocabulary or lexical resources from the previous section. Then remember to use passive voice correctly in your writing task one to describe the process diagram or map. So the key important thing is process description use passive voice again and again. The water is filtered, not someone filters the water. That is very important in your writing task one. Right, let's move on to the example, I mean, map vocabulary or lexical resources, using it to describe transformation and spatial language. So these lexical resources are very important for describing changes to the locations and spatial relationship in IELTS map task. Well, we'll get to the real example next. But now, let's talk about those group of lexical resources or vocabulary using to describe transformation and spatial language. The first group is transformation verbs or lexical resources. So we have converted into, transformed into, replaced by, demolished, knocked down, expanded, extended, relocated, renovated, redeveloped, constructed, erected, built, removed, cleared. Right, so these vocabulary or lexical resources used to describe transformation verbs. And then we have these special expressions vocabulary. These are pretty simple. For example, to the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west of something, or in the northern or southern part of something, adjacent to, next to, alongside, opposite, in the center of, on the outskirts, surrounded by, in the vicinity of, between, and on the corner of. Right. Remember to use these lexical resources, the two group of these vocabulary to describe the map, right? So the map task always use passive voice, same as process diagram. For example, the farmland was converted into a shopping center to the north of the town. Okay, let's have a look at the real example of the map task before and after Greentown. So in this map, you would see two different Greentown. The version of Greentown that was in 1990 and the version of Greentown that has recently renovated in 2020. So if you look at the Greenfield town 1990, you would see the dark green area that is farmland. And then if you compare to the 2020 version, then it is the farmland is being converted to or into the shopping center and the gray area that is car park. And then we have woodland in Greenfield Town 1990. That is the a green color on your left. And if you compare to the 2020 version, then this woodland is being developed or you know um, converted into sports complex. Then we have this residential area in the 1990. It is being converted into expanded residential. So before it was residential, but it was small. But now it is being expanded. It's larger, right? Almost 3 or 5 times. Then the church is staying the same, except there's an apartment around the church. All right, then we have this open land. What we could notice in the 2020 version is that there's a river, but the bridge was being built, you know, right over the river, which connected, you know, uh, to the expanded residential area. Then we have Jewel Carriageway. Then new housing was also built. So the color code down there, I think it's important for you to clearly identify the color code for each place. So as I stated earlier, dark green was farmland, purple is residential, woodland is green, red is shopping center, gray is car park, blue is sports complex, then yellow is church and bridge, then another purple is apartments. So you can see the example, okay? So farmland in the north was converted into a shopping center. So in the north, that is a special vocabulary was converted into that is of course transformation vocabulary or lexical resources, and we use it as a passive voice, past simple passive voice right there. Okay, then we have the second example. The residential area was significantly expanded. and a new bridge was constructed across the river. So again, we try to use those two group of vocabulary where we talked about earlier. The lexical resource is the vocabulary group used to describe transformation, and the second group of vocabulary used to describe special. All right, that should be it for today's session. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next session where we're going to talk about grammar, followed by vocabulary integration. So, building band 8 sentences. I think that is very important for the next video. Thank you.